Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V20 6-Tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Make Walters your spot before and after the MLS All-Star festivities at Audi Field. Skills Challenge Tuesday night, Arsenal against the MLS Stars on Wednesday.
Now the kick and the pitch. Swing and a fly ball left field toward the line, down toward the corner, and this ball is off the wall and in play. Rounding third is Vargas, he'll score, and into second is Joey Meneses. It's an RBI double. Joey Meneses drives in his second run of the day and 48th of the year, and the Nationals have taken the lead here with 2 out in the top of the 8th inning. It's now Washington 5 and St. Louis 4.
The kick and the pitch. Swing a ground ball, base hit right field. Nationals have the lead. Call will score. Abrams racing for third. Walker's throw is cut off. Abrams in at third with a head-first dive as Lane Thomas comes through to give the Nationals the lead on an 0-2 pitch. It's the Nationals 6, St. Louis 5. Harvey's got the sign. 2 balls, 2 strikes, 2 down. The kick and the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out, and this ball game is over. The Nationals down the Cardinals 7-5 in 10 innings. They take game 1 in this 3-game series, a suspended game.
Irvin coming set. 1-1 pitch. Swung on. Line drive center field. Base hit. Fielded on a hop by Call. In from third to score is Donovan with the 4th run of the inning. Here's the 2-2. Swinging a long drive to left field. This is way back. Burleson to the warning track, angling on it at the wall. He leaps, and he made the catch. Tagging from third is Chavis. He'll come in to score. And back to first holding is Thomas, and a ball looked like it might get out of here. Looks like the glove goes over the wall, Dave. He robbed Meneses of a 3-run homer. But the Nationals get the tying run. Espino rocks, kicks, and delivers. Swing and a drive to deep left. Back goes Garrett, way back, and it is gone. Goodbye. A line drive just clears the wall in straightaway left field. It's now a 5-run lead for the Cardinals. It's St. Louis 9 and Washington 4.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Sunday, July 16th. 2023, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Hope that you had a nice All-Star break. So much for the Nats having just had that 4-day All-Star break. They, over these last 2 days, have spent the equivalent of, it seems like, 4 days at Busch Stadium. So we have this 3-game series at the St. Louis Cardinals. Game 1, a 7-5, 10-inning Nats win in a rain-suspended game that started on Friday night, was completed on Saturday afternoon. This was a wild game, a game in which the Nats blew a 5-4 8th-inning lead. This was a game also in which the Nats, in the top of the 5th, scored 3 runs despite not registering a single hit. And then game 2 of the series, a 9-6 Nats loss on Saturday night in a game in which the Nats did overcome a 4-0 third-inning deficit, and in a game for which the start was delayed by rain for an hour and 5 minutes. The Nats now are 37 and 55. We, over these 2 games, have seen Nats relievers total 12 into third innings, as just like that, Davey Martinez is back to having a text bullpen. But we, over these 2 games, also have seen some good stuff from the Nats offense. A lot to get to, but I tell you, Mark, these first 2 days of the Nats post-All-Star break portion of the season, not exactly a calm and run-of-the-mill first 2 days.
No, Al, and the shame of it is everybody shows up in St. Louis on Friday. They're refreshed. They're ready to go. I think Davey was especially excited that for the first time in a long time, he'd go into a whole series and know his pitching staff is well rested. He could use whoever he wanted, whenever he wanted. No concerns about any of that. And already 2 games in, now he's had to use everybody up, overextend them. There were guys who weren't available in what may have been a winnable game on Saturday night. And so it's like, they can't even catch a break there. It's like they're already now exhausted and taxed only 2 days into it because of the combination of the weather, forcing essentially a doubleheader, and then the fact that the first game goes extra innings on top of all that. So it really was not the best case scenario to start the second half of the season. Now, they won one of the 2 games and they played well at times there. But I think in a lot of ways, this is a little bit of a frustrating start to the second half because it feels like they're behind the 8 ball again already, only 2 days in.
Yeah, you go from rested to not rested in a period of, 24, 48 hours. So I certainly get the frustration from the National standpoint. So, a bunch of different things we want to cover with what has happened with the Nats over these 2 games. But maybe the most significant thing in terms of player availability, especially considering that we are coming up on this MLB trade deadline on August 1st, Jeimer Candelario. So he was the Nats starting third baseman and number 3 batter in game 1 of this series. The game that started on Friday night was concluded on Saturday afternoon. Candelario in the top of the first on Friday night struck out swinging on 9 pitches for the 3rd out, then left the game due to a right thumb bone bruise that he suffered during a defensive drill on Friday afternoon. Now, it's been a rough last few weeks for Candelario physically. First of all, you may recall this, he actually hurt his left thumb in a game not too long ago, a 5-4 10-inning loss to the Cincinnati Reds at Nationals Park on July 6th. He also had a knee issue not long ago. I know it was said that Candelario could potentially pinch hit in game 2 of this series. As you and I have joked many times, when you hear that, that almost always means that the guy will not end up pinch hitting. And sure enough, Candelario did not pinch hit in game 2. But what's your sense on what we're looking at here with Jeimer Candelario?
It's still a pretty big question mark, I think, as they go into Sunday morning. And yeah, you're right. There was an opportunity, a big spot in the nightcap of the doubleheader where if he was available, he would have pinch hit. And I asked Davey Martinez about it afterwards. And he says, yes, if he was available, he would have hit for Michael Chavis with the bases loaded in what was still a close game that they could have come all the way back with one big swing there. So that tells you something. The thumb is pretty swollen. It's weird. It was a fluke thing. It happened during a defensive drill. A ground ball snuck up on him and caught him on the thumb. He thought he could play through it, but if you watched that first at-bat, there were a couple of weird things in it. He took a bunch of pitches to begin the at-bat. Then he squared around to bunt, which you don't see him do very much. He wound up pulling it back because it was a bad pitch. And then he fouled off 3 straight, and you could see each time he was shaking his hand, that it was not comfortable. And then the last swing looked really uncomfortable, and he sort of jogged off the field immediately. So you could tell something wasn't right there. Now, the grand scheme of things, maybe a thumb injury is better than if it was his side or an oblique or his back, which I know a lot of people at first thought it might be. But they got to be careful with this, and you can't just put him out there if he's not ready. But as you point out, we are 2 weeks away from the trade deadline at this point, and he is their most tradable chip that they have. Now, they're going to say they don't consider that kind of thing, and that if he's good to play, he's going to play. You can't tell me in the back of Davey Martinez and the back of Mike Rizzo's mind that they're thinking about that and trying to just, above all else, make sure that they're not doing anything that could drastically alter what they might want to do 2 weeks from now.
Well, the Nats' third baseman in place of Jeimer Candelario has been potentially another trade chip, Ildemaro Vargas, and he has continued to do what he has done for really so much of his time with the Nats, and that is produce when called upon. Vargas in game 1 of this series, 1 for 4 with a single, and Vargas in game 2 of the series, the game on Saturday night, 1 for 4 with a 2-run double and a walk. Vargas in a Nats 2-run ninth, a 2-out 2-run double to left field on an 0-2 pitch to cut the Nats deficit to 9-6. So the Nats over these first 2 games have had some big-time bullpen problems, both in terms of having to use a bunch of guys and in terms of the effectiveness of those guys. But there also have been some good things offensively with the Nats. And I think one of the more emerging items from this series from a Nats standpoint, certainly from the Department of Positives, is C.J. Abrams and the job that this guy is doing as the Nats now regular leadoff batter, the Nats now regular number 1 batter. He really has become like an on-base machine. This has been so nice to see. And, he's getting on base in a variety of ways. He's stealing bases, and he now has actually shown some pop. Lack of power had been a real thing with Abrams throughout this season. Even in this recent run of being the number 1 batter, we had not seen much power, but we did see some power on Saturday night. So Abrams in game 1 of this series, 2 for 5 with 2 leadoff singles, and he went 2 for 2 on stolen bases, including a key steal, a 3-run 5th in this 7-5 10-inning win. Abrams in that inning got on base via a 1-out fielder's choice grounder, stole second base, and it was his steal of second base that drew a throwing error by the Cardinals catcher Wilson Contreras, and Luis Garcia on the play stole home for a 3-1 Nats lead.
Runner goes from first. Pitches high. Throw through by Contreras. Is offline. Gets through the second baseman, Gorman. And in to score on the play, Garcia. And all the way to third is C.J. Abrams. And the Nationals now lead 3-1.
That 3-run fifth was something. The Cardinals committed 3 errors. And like I mentioned earlier, the Nats had a 3-run fifth despite not registering a single hit in the inning, if you could believe that. But then Abrams in the nightcap, the game on Saturday night, the 9-6 loss, 2 for 4 with a solo homer and a single, a 2-run third. Abrams had a 2-out solo homer to right field on a 1-2 pitch to cut the Nats deficit to 4-2, 408 feet per Statcast. Very encouraging what we're seeing from C.J. Abrams.
It is in so many ways, Al. Start with the results. Obviously, those are tremendously positive for him. Getting on base, hitting the ball with some authority, like you said, the home run, which came off a lefty. That's a nice thing to see from him doing that. And the stolen bases, he's 13 for his last 13 in stolen bases, and he's had now 7 of them in his last 6 games. So that is a big part of this. And if you get on, you can try to take advantage of that speed that he has and turn a single or a walk into a double. So he's doing a really nice job of that. But beyond just the results, watching him play since he took over the leadoff spot at the start of the Rangers series last weekend, he looks like a different guy. He looks energized. He looks motivated at the plate, on the bases, in the field. And you can even tell from talking to him that this has been a boost to his confidence. He feels like he has the faith of the team and the manager to put him in that spot. And not to say that he was getting complacent hitting at the bottom of the order, but I think this has been a little bit of a jolt for him, and it's bringing out the best in him. And I mean, boy, if he can somehow keep something like this up for a while now, the rest of the season, that is a huge development. We've been wondering all along, is this guy really a top of the order hitter or not? It's far too soon to make any declarations, but it's noticeable, not just the results, but how he has looked out there.
With the caveat of small sample size, C.J. Abrams now over 5 games as the Nats leadoff batter, batting average of .476, on base percentage of .500, a slugging percentage of .619. Not bad. We certainly will take that. So good job by C.J. Abrams. We did get another home run from Alex Call on Saturday. This has been really interesting, the power that Call has displayed since being brought back up from AAA Rochester. So he was the Nats starting center fielder in each of these first 2 games of the series. He in game 1 as a number 9 batter, 0 for 4 with an RBI fielder's choice. He also got caught on an attempted steal of second base, but Call in the nightcap, 1 for 3 with a solo homer and a hit by pitch. He was a number 8 batter in this game. Call in that 2-run third, a 1-out solo homer to left center to cut the Nats deficit to 4-1, 403 feet per Statcast. Speaking of hitting homers, so when we last left you going into the All-Star break, Joey Meneses was on a home run tear, right? He hit 4 home runs over 3 games against the Texas Rangers. Well, Meneses on Friday/Saturday did not homer, but he came close to homering. And he was, again, productive. He has been the Nats starting designated hitter in each of the first 2 games of this series. Game 1, 2 for 5 with an RBI double and an RBI single. The RBI double was big, a 1-run 8th, a tie-breaking 2-out RBI double to the left field corner on a 1-2 pitch to give the Nats a 5-4 lead. And then Meneses in the night game on Saturday, 1 for 4 with a single and an RBI sac fly. So no, he didn't homer, but some big hits for Meneses over these first 2 games. Seems to be still in that good place that we saw him in going into the All-Star break.
He just missed 2 homers. You had the double down the line, and then Alec Burleson robbed him of at least a double and possibly a home run on what turned out to be that sac fly. He was a couple inches short of clearing the fence on that one. And then you add that with a really nice 2-out RBI opposite field single earlier in the game. And what we have seen, again, small sample, it's only been a few games that this has been going on, but what we have seen here has, I think, really for the first time this season, looked like Joey Meneses from last season. The ability both to come through with opposite field singles, but also to hit the ball hard in the air to the pull side. That's a really good combination if he can keep that up. That's kind of a game changer for him and for a lineup that has sorely needed somebody to do that in the middle of it. These are some really encouraging signs for him.
Yeah, Meneses has his OPS for the season up to 732. We talked about C.J. Abrams. His OPS for this season now is at 706. So maybe, just maybe, we can get some guys into the 700s of OPS with, Lane Thomas and Jeimer Candelario having had to carry the offensive load for so much of this Nats season. Speaking of Lane Thomas, I think a lot of us wondered, well, geez, he was doing so well in the number one spot. C.J. Abrams now is given that number one spot. What's going to happen with Lane? Is the success of Lane Thomas going to maybe be lessened with him out of that oh-so-comfy number one spot? Well, Lane, as a number two batter, is doing just fine, and he, on Saturday, did just fine. In game one of this series at the Cardinals, a 7-5, 10-inning win in a two-run 10th, a tie-breaking opposite field RBI single through the right side of the infield on an 0-2 pitch for a 6-5 Nats lead. And then Lane Thomas in the 9-6 loss on Saturday night, 1 for 4 with a double and a walk. And I know that you asked Davey Martinez during his post-game press conference after the rain-suspended game Saturday afternoon about the significance of Lane Thomas going the opposite way with that RBI single in the two-run 10th.
Yeah, look, that's not who he has been. He's done a great job of pulling the ball. And if you look at his spray chart, it's almost everything to the pull side. But what you saw there in that at-bat, he's facing Jordan Hicks, who's throwing 100 miles an hour. He's down in the count 0-2, and the Cardinals are giving him the entire right side of the infield. They are shaded about as far over as you're allowed to now under MLB's new rules. He took full advantage of that and did exactly what you need to do in the 10th inning of a tie game when you're down in the count. Take what's given to you and take it the other way and take your RBI single and ends up winning the game. I think that was big for him to see that, yes, he can do that. And he talked to us afterwards about understanding when to try to do that. You can't force that issue. You're not going to guide the ball. But he said when you are feeling good at the plate and you're swinging at the right pitches, you can recognize when to do that and when not to. And that was a perfect example. Down in the count and a wide open infield, take what they're giving you. And he very much took it there. And that's a nice sign for him.
Yeah, so the Nats are hitting so far in this series. The 7-5, 10-inning win, the Nats in that game, 7 runs, 8 hits, 2 walks, 5 for 12 with runners in scoring position. The 9-6 loss in game 2 of the series, the Nats in that game, 6 runs, 11 hits, 3 walks, 3 for 13 with runners in scoring position. And I mentioned that 3-run fifth in game 1 of this series. That really was something. The Nats scoring 3 runs despite not registering a single hit. The 3 runs coming on 2 walks, 2 stolen bases, 3 Cardinals errors, and a wild pitch. I mean, I know that you see that in baseball from time to time, but that inning really was something. It's hard to put up a crooked number without registering a single hit. And to see the Nats do that and to see the sloppiness by the Cardinals in that inning. I mean, look, St. Louis is not having a good season at all. These are 2 of the 3 worst teams in the National League in terms of records this season. But boy, that inning was something to watch just from like purely an entertainment standpoint. It was just so bizarre.
The Cardinal way is not what it used to be, right? If that's the new Cardinal way, yikes, look out. Look, they obviously took advantage of some bad defense by St. Louis, but they also forced the issue some by running as well as they did. You mentioned that double steal. That's a great example of it. Draw the throw, and then you can end up getting the runner home from third on the back end of the double steal. So that's good stuff there. I really like the approach, and they understand. Look, they know who they are at this point. They're not a home run hitting team. They'll hit occasionally now and then, but they understand they're going to have to do it in other ways. And so if you've got, I mean, look at it this way. You're 9-1-2 right now. Alex Call, C.J. Abrams, Lane Thomas. All 3 guys can steal bases. All can force the issue. If they're on base, use that to your advantage. Try to force the issue. And I think really one of the few times we've seen them do that this year, they were the aggressors. They put the pressure on the Cardinals and took advantage of their sloppy defense, and it absolutely paid off for them. I don't know I've ever seen a team score 3 runs without a hit in the entire inning. And that's maybe not the way you normally expect to try to score 3 runs, but the way the Washington Nationals in 2023 are, it's the way you're going to have to score runs sometimes.
You do what you have to do in sports and in life. That's just the way that it has to be.
Are you looking for tickets to an upcoming event? That's why you should download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code NATSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. You get cheaper tickets, and it helps the podcast a bit. Sounds like a smooth 6-4-3 double play. Again, create an account and redeem the code NATSCHAT for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Hey, are you a law firm partner stuck on an underperforming team while the rest of the competitors are spending big and winning big? Well, Unlike Mackenzie Gore and Keibert Ruiz, you have options. You don't have to stay on your 60-win team. Nats Chat sponsor Mason Kalfis and his team specialize in placing partners and associates at medium-sized and large law firms in Washington, D.C. and across the country. Mason Kalfis has recruiters in 6 states and has placed lawyers in more than half of the 100 largest law firms in the United States. While you may be reading doom and gloom from the legal press, many practices are red hot. Antitrust, IP litigation, white-collar litigation, finance and direct lending, and healthcare. Because you are not under a CBA or team control for 6 years. In fact, staying at a firm too long is often a recipe for being underpaid. Explore your options today with Mason Kalfis. Call Mason today at 202-486-3535. That number again, 202-486-3535.
Hey, Nats Chat Podcast, here to tell you about Factor Meal Delivery Service. It's a new partnership that our podcast will be able to enjoy, and we think you will too. Now that we're in the thick of summer, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals to support sunny, active days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track, reaching your goals. Too busy with summer plans to cook, but want to make sure you're eating well? With Factor, skip the extra trip to the grocery store and the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too, while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality you need. This July, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes, no prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/NatsChat50 and use code NatsChat50 to get 50% off. That's code NatsChat50 at factormeals.com.
Ballpark Village. Here's a swing and a line drive fair past the diving Smith down the right field line toward the corner for extra bases. Rounding third, Gorman, he will score. Behind him, Herrera trying to score. Runner heading for third, no play there. It's a triple. 2 runs batted in for Brendan Donovan. And it's a 3-run inning with a crooked number up for the Cardinals. It's St. Louis 3 and Washington 0.
So this has not been a banner series so far for the Nationals in terms of their starting pitching. Part of that is circumstance, i.e. rain, but part of that is some ineffectiveness. But you had Trevor Williams as the Nats starting pitcher in the 7-5-10 inning win in the rain-suspended game, and he started the portion of the game that was played on Friday night, and of course did not pitch in the resumption of the game on Saturday afternoon. For Williams in this game, 1 run, 2 2/3 innings. He had 5 strikeouts in the 2 2/3 innings. He issued a walk and a hit by pitch. Only gave up 1 hit, which was a 2-out opposite field solo homer by Lars Nootbaar, one of the great names in MLB, on a 1-2 pitch in the bottom of the first for a 1-0 Cardinals lead. But, it was disappointing to see Jake Irvin struggle as he did on Saturday night. He'd been so much better since having his turn in the rotation skipped, but he in this game was bad, really for the first time in 6 starts since having that turn in the rotation skipped. 4 runs in 3 innings. All 4 of the runs came in the bottom of the second. He, over the 3 innings, gave up 6 hits, a homer, a triple, and 4 singles, issued a walk and a hit by pitch. He had 3 strikeouts, but man, he threw a lot of pitches. 3 innings, 79 pitches, although they did consist of a good number of strikes, 51 strikes versus 28 balls. But that 4-run Cardinals second, you had Irvin giving up a leadoff homer by Alec Burleson on a bomb to right center field for a 1-0 Cardinals lead, 427 feet per Statcast. Irvin gave up a single by Nolan Gorman to right field despite Gorman having been down in the count at 1.12. Irvin issued a 1-out hit by pitch of the Cardinals' number 9 batter, Ivan Herrera. Irvin gave up a 1-out 2-run triple by Brendan Donovan toward the right field corner for a 3-0 Cardinals lead despite Donovan having been down at 1.12. And on that triple was Lane Thomas misplaying the ball out of the right field corner. And then you had Irvin giving up a 1-out opposite field RBI single by Paul Goldschmidt to right center field for a 4-0 Cardinals lead. So things really did come apart in that 4-run Cardinals second. He had been so much better. It is just one bad outing. So if he's back to being good in the next outing, all can be forgiven. But this was kind of back to the Jake Irvin we saw prior to his turn in the rotation being skipped.
Yeah, and that's the high pitch count, which we saw from him when he struggled. Now, some of this was the Cardinals. They fouled off 24 of those 79 pitches. That's a lot. But it's also on Irvin as well for not locating as well as he could have, not being able to put away hitters when he had the chance with 2 strikes. Now, it was really hot and muggy. He did apparently deal with like a lot of sweat and was having trouble getting good grip on the ball. It's unfortunately part of life in the big leagues when you're playing in July in St. Louis and in DC and Atlanta and everywhere else they may be. And this is a guy who pitched collegiately at Oklahoma, so you would hope that he understands how to deal with it. But it's something they're going to have to work on and try to figure out how to combat that. The shame of this is you go into the start knowing you would use everybody in the bullpen to get through game 1 because of the suspension and the fact that it went extra innings and it's a close game, so you're going to use them all. You come into this one, you're saying, okay, we need length from the starter in this game. Jake knew it. He admitted it. And to be knocked out 3 innings in because you threw 79 pitches is the last thing you're looking for. So you hope it's just one start. You hope the circumstances just kind of threw him off somewhat. But it is the first time in a while we're talking like this about him. And what he had done such a nice job of throughout this process was taking himself out of the equation for thinking about his job security. I don't think one bad start's going to change any of that. And it's not like they got somebody knocking down the door that's immediately ready to come up. But you want to get this back on track again. And if he has another bad start, now those thoughts start creeping through your mind. And all of a sudden, he's not the lock to stay in the rotation.
And so with Trevor Williams having an abbreviated outing due to the rain and Jake Irvin having an abbreviated outing due to him just not pitching well, this Nats bullpen is right back to having been worked quite a bit. Like I mentioned earlier, 12 and a third innings for Nationals relievers so far over the first 2 games of this series. And the results have not been good. The 7-5-10 inning win, 5 Nats relievers combined to allow 4 runs in 7 and a third innings. In the 9-6 loss, 3 Nats relievers combined to allow 5 runs in 5 innings. We, in that 10-inning win, had Corey Abbott as the Nats pitcher to begin the resumed portion of the game on Saturday afternoon. He allowed 3 runs in 2 and a third innings. You know, you had that 3-run top of the 5th by the Nats, and then Abbott in the bottom of the 5th allowed 3 runs. He gave up a 1-out double by Paul DeJong, issued a 1-out first pitch hit by pitch of Dylan Carlson, and then gave up a 1-out full count 3-run homer by Brendan Donovan to right field to tie the game at 4. So just like that big 3-run 5th by the Nats got wiped out. Jordan Weems did toss 1 2/3 scoreless innings. Mason Thompson faced 1 batter and got 1 out. And the 1 out came via a nice defensive play by first baseman Dominic Smith, a terrific over-the-shoulder running catch in shallow right field to retire the Cardinals' number 2 batter, Paul Goldschmidt, with a runner on second, 2 outs, and the game tied at 4 in the bottom of the 7th. Then came the latest adventures of Kyle Finnegan. And, if you are unfamiliar with the work of Kyle Finnegan, what happened with him in game 1 of this series is like the perfect microcosm of Finnegan. We saw the worst of Finnegan, and we saw the best of Finnegan. He allowed a run in 2 innings. He, in the bottom of the 8th, gave up a big homer, gave up a game-tying 2-out opposite field solo homer by Wilson Contreras to right center field on an 0-2 pitch to tie the game at 5. I mean, just brutal. 415 feet per Statcast, too. I mean, that was like a no-doubter. And again, on an 0-2 pitch. But Finnegan, to his credit, did then toss a perfect bottom of the 9th with 2 strikeouts to preserve the 5-all tie. And that ended up proving to be significant, with the Nats doing as they did with the 2-run top of the 10th, and then Hunter Harvey tossed a perfect bottom of the 10th. What'd you think about what happened with Finnegan in game 1?
I think both Finnegan and Hunter Harvey, it feels like this is what happens with them. They look really good at times. And when they're not, it's usually one big swing that's a home run. It's very rarely a sustained chip away at you kind of rally with multiple hits, multiple walks, and the inning kind of slowly unraveling in front of your eyes. It's been kind of one big swing. And so I think it does show you that the stuff is very good. But if they miss their location and they leave it over the plate, these are hitters who can then drive that ball 400 feet and change a game on you. So, I don't want to read too much into that one home run because I did think he was pretty good. Otherwise, the fact that he came back, that Davey trusted him to come back, and that he delivered then with a 1-2-3 9th inning and that looked as good as he did in that one, I think that was significant. He was actually lobbying to come back for the 10th. At that point, Davey said, no, you're fine. We'll go to Harvey. I just think this is kind of who he is. It's kind of who Hunter Harvey is, that overall there's been way more good than bad from them, but the bad is particularly bad because it feels like it's home runs. It's a lot happening with one swing. It's not slow just the inning devolving on you. It's one big swing, and all of a sudden that changes the game.
Yeah, if you add up Finnegan and Harvey this season, they have combined to allow 11 home runs in just 79 and 2/3 innings. That's too many homers from your top two relievers to have given up that many home runs in, that few of an innings count, relatively speaking. I mean, 79 and 2/3 is not a small sample size, but, when you're talking about relievers, like, if a starter gave up 11 homers in less than 80 innings of work, you'd say, that's not good. Like, that's a lot of homers for a pitcher.
And these are important home runs when you're pitching late in games, as they are.
Yeah, right. I mean, these are many times high leverage spots, no doubt. And then just to close the book on the bullpen, the 9-6 loss on Saturday night. Like I said, 3 Nats relievers, 5 runs in 5 innings. Amos Willingham, a run in 1 2/3 innings. The real problem was Jose A. Ferrer. He officially allowed 2 runs in 1/3 of an inning. He was a mess in what ended up being a 3-run fifth for the Cardinals. Faced 5 batters, got just 1 out. And then our guy, Paolo Espino, he is back. Who knows for how long here, but he pitched on Saturday night. 2 runs in 3 innings. It seems like Paolo does not do his best in these Saturday night games. Remember, he had that big start against the Dodgers a few years ago, did not go so well on a Saturday night. And here we had Paolo on this Saturday night having some issues. But the Nats on Friday morning announced that they had placed Patrick Corbin on the paternity list and had recalled Paolo Espino from AAA Rochester. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of pitchers have been used. The Nats do have an off day coming up on Thursday. So it's not like, this is one of these stretches of like 2 weeks without an off day. But, you have game 3 of this series to get through. Then you have 3 games set at the Chicago Cubs to get through. And already a lot has been asked of this team. Had the Nats done better on Saturday night, who from game 1 might have been able to pitch in game 2? I guess Mason Thompson. He only faced 1 batter. But like Hunter Harvey, could he have pitched in game 2, or you don't think so?
It didn't sound like it. So I asked Davey, if the score was a little different later in the game, would you have come back with anybody from the first game? And he mentioned that Thompson was the one that if it was tied late in the game, he probably would have been the one. Now, I don't know if that means full-fledged save situation or if he would have gone back to Hunter Harvey. One thing about Harvey, and I don't have much on this, but his velocity was down in that 1 inning he threw, a couple miles an hour, and get a chance to check on it after the game. It's something I'm going to try to look into on Sunday. Hopefully it's nothing. You would hate to see anything go wrong with him physically after he's done such a nice job of staying healthy for the first time in his career. But it kind of got lost in that because it was a quick 1, 2, 3 inning. It was effective, but his velocity was 2 to 3 miles an hour below its average. And you hope there's nothing going on there. But I wonder if that also maybe would have played into some decision about whether or not to bring him back. If you're in a pennant race, a different situation, maybe you're willing to push the envelope there. But in addition to the fact that they're not in pennant race, obviously, you've got several guys who've had past arm injuries. And so are you going to do that to them on the first weekend out of the All-Star break and risk any long-term effects? And as well, since we're talking about the trade deadline, if there's any chance that any of those guys might be on the block come here at the end of the month, you certainly don't want to do anything right now that could hurt them.
Yeah, absolutely not. I do want to make mention of this before we call it a show. Baseball America on Friday morning came out with the outlet's updated top 100 prospects list of the 2023 MLB draft. The Nats had 3 top 100 prospects, including 2 of the top 5 prospects in baseball. We wondered, where might Dylan Cruz land in the next installment of the top 100 prospects list, given how highly regarded Dylan Cruz is, the man who the Nats took with the number 2 overall pick in the 2023 MLB draft. And sure enough, outfielder Dylan Cruz, per the Baseball America top 100 prospects list that came out on Friday morning, is the number 4 prospect in baseball. 2 spots ahead of pitcher Paul Skenes, in case you are curious. But Dylan Cruz is at number 4. Outfielder James Wood is at number 5. So how about that? 2 of the top 5 prospects in the sport are Nats outfielders. Also making the list, third baseman / shortstop Brady House, the number 94 prospect in baseball. It is telling that outfielders Elijah Green and Robert Hassel III are not on this top 100 list. I looked up, or I tried looking up, is this the first time that the Nats have ever had 2 top 5 prospects at once? And it's not easy to find all of the data on these top 100 prospects lists going back. If you go to Baseball Reference, though, and you look at players' minor league pages, you can see where those guys were ranked as prospects going into seasons. Not during seasons, but going into seasons. And as best as I can tell, at least if you go by that, this is the first time that the Nats have had 2 top 5 prospects at once, at least per that data. But, just in thinking about it, like you would think, okay, well, Juan Soto and Victor Robles. Well, Juan Soto, as best as I can tell, was never like a top 5 prospect. Victor Robles was, but Soto actually wasn't. So I thought, okay, well, maybe Steven Strasburg, Bryce Harper. Well, but if you do the timeline thing, Harper was drafted in June 2010. By then, Strasburg had already made his major league debut. Now, I guess technically, Strasburg may have still been considered a prospect in June 2010. So maybe somewhere in there, like in June 2010, if there was an in-season prospects list, I don't even know if outlets were doing in-season prospects lists at that time, but maybe then Strasburg and Harper. But otherwise, no. And look, if you have to go back to 2010, I think that's significant in and of itself. So, boy, that is great to see that the Nats, as things stand right now, per an outlet like Baseball America, have 2 of the top 5 prospects in the sport, and Dylan Cruz and James Wood.
Yeah, so Harper was drafted literally the day before Strasburg debuted. They were back-to-back days. Now, again, I don't remember Baseball America doing like an updated list, but if in theory they did a immediate post-draft updated prospects list, that probably would have qualified because Strasburg would still count. A year later, when they drafted Anthony Rendon in 2011, Bryce was still in the minors at that point, so maybe those 2 would have fallen there. But yeah, and this is a rare thing to have, and it's a very nice thing to have. Now, this organization has not lacked for elite prospects. Where they haven't done as well is in the bottom half of that top 100 or even top 200 prospects who end up becoming good quality big leaguers. So in some ways, I think that stuff is more important. I think everybody understands Dylan Cruz, barring any health issues, is going to be a very good player. And it seems like James Wood is going to be the same. So that's great. They need more star power, obviously, here. I'm very interested now to see, though, what can they make of second tier prospects. Can Brady House, Elijah Green, Robert Hassel III, even the third baseman from Miami they just drafted, Yo-Yo, can he work his way up into that kind of thing where you're not being considered one of the top prospects in baseball, but you are good enough to work your way through the system, reach the big leagues, and stick there as a good quality player. One other note on all that, I thought it was interesting, for whatever it's worth, on this latest ranking, you had Cruz at 4, Wood at 5, and Paul Skenes at 6. So Baseball America is saying we think Dylan Cruz is slightly better than Paul Skenes. That's going to be the great debate now for the next decade as we watch both those careers play out.
And one of the guys ahead of Cruz and Wood was Elly De La Cruz, who's going to lose prospect status very soon. So in essence, the Nats have 2 of the top 4 prospects in baseball per Baseball America. You can always email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We got a good question from our guy, Jonathan. Writes Jonathan, I have read that since the Nats participated in the draft lottery last year, they can't pick higher than 10th next year. But is that only if they had the worst record? I've also heard that the rule only applies to large market teams. Any help explaining would be much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, so the new CBA makes things ultra complicated with the draft and the draft lottery and what you can and can't do. Here's the bottom line. The Nationals are ineligible to land a top 10 pick in the 2024 MLB draft due to MLB's revenue sharing plan and their market size. The highest that the Nats can pick in the 2024 draft is 10th. It's interesting. I've seen a lot of conversation about this, that MLB has almost gone too far in the other direction of like being overly punitive to bad teams and to teams that are not doing well and are rebuilding. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this draft stuff goes because, we've gone from, if you're really bad, you can get, a top 2 or top 3 pick in each of however many consecutive drafts. On the other hand, though, is it really right that you pick as high as 10th? If you're a really bad team of having had, say, the number 2 overall pick in a year. So, we'll see how that shakes out. But that is worth pointing out that, if you're worried about, well, the Nats, it's better if they lose and we don't want them to win. Well, they can't pick higher than 10th in the 2024 draft. So keep that in mind as this season goes on.
Right. It does not matter what their record ends up this year. They're just not going to be able to be in the running for one of those top picks. The thought behind this is you don't want to have the same teams every year tanking or whether it's intentional or not, and being in that position where they're always going for a top, 2 or 3 pick. The problem is, I think everybody would acknowledge that baseball can be cyclical and that it's okay for a franchise like the Nationals, who won a World Series and then got to a point that they decided that we have to tear it down. Now you're going to rebuild. I think it's okay to have a couple of years there where you're in that position, as long as you're then getting better and spending money and fielding a competitive team a few years after that. You just don't want it to be the same team year after year. So it's a little complicated. Like you said, the revenue sharing is a strange part of it, whether you're big market or not. I don't love this. I know the Nats are probably frustrated that this would happen to them at this time, but it is true. They cannot pick better than 10th. And so don't be worried about what their record is compared to the Royals or the A's or anybody else at the bottom of the pile. It's not going to make a difference in the end.
What's funny, too, of course, is that if you look at MLB drafts, there often isn't that much of a difference between picking like 10th and 2nd. I mean, good players are all over the place in MLB drafts. I mean, every draft is an inexact science, but especially the baseball draft, because you're talking about, high school players and college players, all of whom are at least, a year, 2 years, 3 years away from making the majors. So it often doesn't matter that much where you're picking in a first round, but clearly you would rather have, a top 2 or top 3 pick as opposed to, say, the number 10 pick. Well, you tell us what you think. Hit us up on Twitter at @Nats_chat. And you can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to sponsor the program. We'd love to have you on board. Contact Tim Shover. See what we can do for you, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website as well, natschatpodcast.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. A thank you to Tim Newmark for the music of the Nats Chat podcast. Check out his site, timnewmark.com. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday mornings, 11 to 12 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and ESPNRichmond.com online. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast.
Carter Young, the shortstop, swings at the first and sends this one towards the gap. Diving grab by Dylan Cruz.
Say what would have been a double, should have been a second and third situation, but Dylan Cruz comes up